Good evening, everyone. It's April 10th, 2019. This is the Hatfield Planning Board meeting for April 10th. My name is Bob Wagner. I'm the chair of the committee. To my left is Steph Schliz. To my right, we welcome back Paul Dostal and Paul Abbey. And Mike Poshek, our other member, is not here tonight. If anyone just came in, we do have a sign-up sheet for, I think it's behind you, so if you can make sure you get that when that makes its way around. We do not have any formal hearings tonight. For anyone that was expecting there to be a hearing on the zoning bylaws, and also on Clean Focus Renewables, the solar project. I just want to let you know that the zoning bylaws that we hope and wish to put before the town at May town meeting are going to be considered at a public hearing next Wednesday, April 10th at April 17th, thank you, at 6:30. And that will be the only item on the agenda that night will be to present and discuss or answer any questions that folks may have about those zoning bylaws. It's and we will be discussing them here tonight. So if anyone is interested in the audience or on television of sticking with us, we will be discussing those and just going over some fact sheets that have been put together by Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. But we will have again, a hearing next week on amendments to our zoning bylaw on open space development. These are amendments to our current open space development bylaw to include in the table of use regulations, a new section on accessory apartments, some housekeeping items on floodplain overlay district, and similarly, some housekeeping items on Chapter 43D, Expedited Permitting. So I would encourage people to either come to the meeting next week to learn more about those or to watch the program before town meeting. Clean Focus Renewables, actually I'm going to take this vote right now. They have requested, as you know, at our last meeting, we continued their hearing to today, and then they requested that we actually postpone their continued hearing until May 1st, which is our next meeting. As you remember, at our last meeting, we specifically asked them to provide us with more details on a stormwater management plan, and we also, in the interim, since our last meeting, we've retained with Stephanie's good help of connecting us up with them, we've retained GZA Engineering, which is the firm that also provided peer review to the Conservation Commission on this project. We've retained them to provide peer review analysis for us on the soon-to-be submitted stormwater management plan as well as the decommissioning plan. So we'll have both of those ready for the hearing on May 1st. So with that, the only other things we have on the agenda tonight are informal meetings with three individuals or three groups interested in potential projects here in town, and then we will have a conversation amongst the three of us to have on the zoning bylaw amendments that we'll be putting before everyone in the hearing next week. So is Tammy Powers here?
Actually,
okay.
Yeah, so that's my secretary.
Oh, okay, all right.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Not.
So if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Okay.
Actually, if you can sit right there, and then you can be by that microphone.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that'd
All
be
right.
great.
So actually, my name is Steve Keyes. Tammy Powers works for me, okay?
Okay.
So this is about this lot, the Skarzinski lot. I submitted the plans there about,
He's got him right here.
Okay,
I had engineered plans for this lot to bring in some fill, and I was talking with the inspector. We just wanted to make sure that I want to make sure I have all my permits if there is any I need. You know I'll pull a permit when I build the house, but for now I want to bring it into this engineered specifications. I want to bring that fill in.
So the lot
It was
is,
the one that was auctioned off, it looks like.
oh, this is the one that was auctioned off by the town?
Right.
Okay. And so Kyle, this is a pre-existing lot, right? It has 200 feet of frontage?
Pre-existing non-conforming,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And you need to bring in fill for the house?
Yes, yep.
It's got a downward slope off the road.
Oh, right, yep.
And if he brings it up, he could access the sewer, he has no way to do it right now, the elevation's off.
So the issue would be, I mean, in terms of it being a buildable lot, that's not something that we're going to weigh in on because
No,
it's
not
a
at all.
pre-existing lot. But you would want to talk with the Conservation Commission.
It was due to the amount of fill. It's a good sizable amount of fill, Bob. The reason I had him come before you, just in case there was something I missed where he needed to have planning board approval if he was going to fill a lot to that degree. Because it is an extensive amount of fill. But he did get it engineered, so.
Well,
Is it a lot more than what the other lots had done?
No, it's the same.
It's the same,
Yeah.
It would be the same as.
is
the
Richie
abutment.
Strong and the other one? and-
It'd be just
yeah,
the same,
okay.
yeah.
So it's the same amount
No,
of
no,
fill?
Yes. Yes, sir.
No, I don't think we ever weighed in on it, on those lots. when they-
that would have been well before my
it was-
time,
I-
yeah.
I think I might have been on the board when they built that last house,
Or
but
it's more COSCOM probably than ours?
Yes.
Okay? As long as it's a non-conforming lot, that's what we're worried about, okay?
it's a pre-existing.
Pre-existing non-conforming,
No, it's
that's what we're
buildable.
worried about.
Right.
The other
not-
stuff, you gotta deal with the rest of the
Perfect.
boards in town.
I just wanted to make sure.
That's okay.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Now,
fine.
how
So-
much you gotta come up to get to the sewer? How high is the sewer? Or how low is it underground?
I gotta come up like 12 feet.
You do?
Yep.
So
Maybe
it's only
that's-
like,
maybe a little
so it's only like 5 feet underground?
Yes.
4 feet, 5
Yes,
feet
yes,
underground,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not that bad.
Yeah, okay.
So, so I would encourage you to get in touch with Wilma Davis about getting on the next Conservation Commission's meeting.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, because you're
So-
going to want to, I mean, any fill.
keep those?
Yeah, I mean, any fill that you're doing, particularly if it's anywhere near a wetland or in the floodplain or anything like that,
Sure.
is going to
Yeah.
fall under Conservation Commission.
So, which it's not, so, I think. But as far as you guys are concerned, though, it's fine, it's a buildable lot.
Yeah, I mean, then, it would be, you'd still obviously need to go through the building inspector, and he would
Sure.
take you from there.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Jeff Dawson, Place Alliance Northeast.
Yep.
Got some draft plans for you guys to
Thank
look
you.
at. So we are looking at a parcel on 117 West Street. And then here's some kind of draft architectural plans as well. So I'm here representing Scapes Builders and Excavation. They're currently in South Deerfield with a staging facility in Conway, Mass. And they bought a parcel in 117 West Street, which is a 5.8 acre parcel, zoned light industrial. In 2017, we went in front of the Conservation Commission and had a positive determination for an RDA, just to kind of lock in the natural resources on the parcel, and allowing the client to do some tree clearing outside of the buffer zone in the meantime, while they're kind of figuring out what they were gonna construct. But the main idea is that they're gonna relocate their headquarters to this location, and the building they're proposing is a little bit over 4,000 square feet. The main part of the building will house the Scapes headquarters, and then there's gonna be 6 single office spaces for rent in there as well. And then just quickly, currently, the property right now, as I mentioned, is a 5.8 acre parcel. There's a single family home on the site. What we conferred with the Conservation Commission is there's farm drainage ditch that conveys intermittent flow along the southern boundary of the property and goes under a culvert in West Street. So we do have a 100-foot bank buffer associated with that. And then the idea is to construct this building, which will house their business headquarters, but then also in the back of the property, have a pole barn and also a laydown area, trap rock laydown area, where they can use staging for their equipment and some stockpiling. So the design that we're looking at is, as you come into the building, there'd be an 18 space parking lot in front. 2 of those would be accessible. And then in the back of the property would be another additional 8 parking spaces for Scapes employees only. And then in the back of the parcel would be this kind of trap rock laydown area that they could use for staging. And then looking at a 40 by 60 workshop area. And then the final product, there's a lot of, right now, aside from the intermittent flow on the southern channel, there's a lot of sheet flow that comes from the neighboring property. So you'll notice there's a significant amount of bioretention on the site. And so that's, mostly that's addressing the sheet flow that's coming onto the site. It's not being created from the impervious surfaces as much as it is the sheet flow coming off. And then ultimately having a naturalized landscape with custom seed mixes and native plantings. And so we're here tonight just to kind of see how you'd like this filed. It kind of fits a couple different areas based on the chart. So just trying to understand how you'd like to see this filed, and if there's any kind of revisions or anything right off the bat that you see before we kind of go through the more detailed process.
Would the single-family home not be there? It would be taken down? Is
Correct,
that
yeah,
what-
so they'll demolish that.
Yeah.
You know, so right now, the single-family home's kind of right about here. So they would demolish that. They do need to bring the site up a little bit in grade, just because of groundwater and having a differentiation between the bioretention and the groundwater.
This is all slab on grade, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And have you done the perk test and all that
Yep,
stuff?
we've done perk
The
tests.
septic system's already designed?
Yep, that's correct, yep. So we've done all the
To
perk
take
tests.
all of this, all of the pieces are going into that one septic system, right?
Well, the septic is just, so everything's for the stormwater you're talking about?
No, yeah, everything, no, I'm talking about all of the buildings are attached to that one septic system.
Correct, yep. The pole barn is just gonna be a workshop.
Yeah.
And so this office space, Scapes, predominantly has about 8 people in their office at any given time. And then the rental space, which you can kind of see on the architectural plans, is just one kind of singular office space. So, 12, 14 people kind of working at any given time, aside from visitors. And then most of their staff is typically out in the field doing work other than when they're coming and going.
So this, you would describe this as a professional medical and business office, 4.81?
The
Construction.
Not construction.
It's a
it's got the-
construction company, isn't it?
construction company, so I was actually.
Because you're describing these as a proposed office building.
Office space under 15,000 square feet.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But just given the type of business they are, using the back for kind of, they do a lot of ecological restoration work, so they stockpile things like root wads and things like that, so I just wasn't sure, it's not your kind of typical office space, so I didn't know if it just kind of fit in that mold, or if there was kind of another route that you'd like to see us take.
No vehicle storage, no construction vehicle storage?
There will be construction equipment in that back area, yes.
But open storage
Yep.
would be under 5.27, wouldn't it? Construction industry, suppliers including storage of materials and equipment, which is allowed in light industrial.
Well, you had Osley Construction right down there, right, a little ways down the road that ran on there. That must have been light industry.
Look up
Yeah,
5.2.
yeah, I
Huh?
see it. Yep, construction, industry and suppliers, including open storage and materials and equipment,
Yeah.
5.27,
5.27.
which is,
It's allowed in light industrial.
site plan review.
Just site plan review?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm curious, it's always nice to not necessarily have parking lots out in the front. What kind of setback do you have off of that, and what are you thinking of in terms of screening from West Street?
Certainly, so,
I'm thinking of, you probably have driven by RK Miles. They have a parking lot out in front, but you really don't see it because of the screening
correct.
they've
Yep.
done.
Yeah.
Yep, so the idea would be to, as much as possible, this is kind of bioretention area, so it is a little bit of a depression. But this will all be planted with native trees and shrubs and kind of have a naturalized meadow feel to it. So having that elevated to kind of buffer the parking lot area. But really the main reason for having the parking lot in front and not out back is because majority of the sheet flow is coming over here, so we didn't want to impede that in any way. And then also the primary entrance is going to be the front of the building for accessing the shared office space. So providing all the accessible parking and the majority of the parking up front, just to get that frontage access was kind of our thinking.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out here for the committee, which we haven't talked at all about. I'm thinking about what they ended up having to do on King Street. How would we feel about them putting in a sidewalk? Because someday we may actually have enough development on West Street that we look more like King Street. And we actually have, it may be a sidewalk to nowhere for a long, long time, and maybe it will never go anywhere, which maybe would be the best thing. But at some point, we are going to perhaps have a need for pedestrian mobility along West Street.
I like that idea.
I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's a good idea. My one thing would be that this is the property line, and then this is Route 10, so this is all DOT right-of-way. So I don't know just how that
plays into
would
it.
fly. So if it were our property and we had frontage right to it,
So you're looking at where? To the,
So this
to
green,
there,
where this-
all that green there is that's the
DOT right-of-way.
DOT right away.
Yep, and there is a significant slope and there's some drainage that goes underneath the road, so
Yeah.
just logistically, it's not, we don't have control over that part of,
Well, we can check into DOT,
yep.
because of course the state is trying to
Oh, yeah,
develop
they're all
as
about the
many.
complete streets and all that,
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly, yep. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we
Yeah.
don't have control over that, so, I just don't know how that works.
Yeah, and it would be, why would you be back in here with the sidewalk when you got all, all of this
How many
DOT stuff
feet
in
is
here?
Yeah, so I just don't know how much they'll want us to put one there for them, or,
how big a space is that, does it say
the
here?
frontage is 210 feet.
No, I meant
No,
the,
how-
Oh,
the green,
from
that,
the width.
that,
Yeah, what's
from
that?
the
set?
black line, from what they own, how,
How much is the DOT?
10? Oh, no, wait a minute,
No, it's a lot bigger than
More than
that.
that, God, it's more than that.
40 feet?
45, 60 feet.
Do you know what the setback is from the edge of the road to your to your parking lot? What's that?
It's over, I think the setback is 25, so it's like, it's about 30, I believe.
From the road to
Oh, from the road,
Ro-
from our property line or the road?
the road?
Oh, so the
85
road.
feet
It's
then.
probably
Yeah.
80.
85 feet, almost 100 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can inquire as to DOT and see where, because this will be the first time that we've actually,
Yep.
I think, something like this in front of RK Miles would have made sense when they first went
Absolutely,
in.
yeah. Yeah, and the condition there's a little bit different. It's a little bit more dense.
Right.
It's much flatter and much more open, where this is kind of a more wooded condition, and there's a
Right.
steep slope off of Route 10.
Right.
So that's just my only kind of
Yeah.
initial reaction, but I don't think it's bad, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'd have to look into it more.
Yeah, we
more.
can do that. Okay. So we're gonna,
I got one more question.
yeah, I just want to make sure, we're okay with construction industry and suppliers, including open storage and materials and equipment,
Which is the 5.27.
5.27,
And that's just, as you
Yeah.
said, site plan review?
site plan review.
Okay.
Because if we were to go, because you do
I
have,
wasn't sure, just looking at the matrix there, which one would fit in best, but.
I want to look at just the office building again. Professional, medical, and office building. Well, even if because it is sort of a combination of an office
Yeah,
building.
that's why I was like, it's a couple of these, so
Right.
how do you guys want to see?
But
you know?
that's site plan review as well.
Well,
Yeah,
So
okay,
it, under 4.18.
okay,
So it's the same review,
Perfect.
whether it's 4.18 or 5.27, even though you have sort of a combination of the
Yep.
two.
okay,
All right.
great. So is there anything else on
yeah,
the
under,
plan?
I just have a question.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
on the front here,
Yep.
these trees in here, they're all gonna, most of those, this is what kind of trees, are those pine trees or are those,
You know, a lot of
Leaf?
it is,
what do they call leaves?
Swamp maple
Deciduous?
probably in there, is there?
yeah, it's a lot of deciduous stuff. There's some hemlock in there,
Yeah.
some shagbark hickory.
So most of those are gonna be gone.
Yeah, so everything we're doing construction-wise is predominantly staying out of the 100-foot buffer. There is some tree clearing that's gonna be going in there. We have brought this in front of the Conservation Commission. We are gonna be filing an NOI with them. But their initial reaction to this plan was that this would be kind of showcase project for mitigation and restoration, so they were very happy with the product, even though there is some tree clearing going
Yeah.
on. The end result is gonna be kind of an exemplary project for restoration.
They're
And,
probably more concerned with you staying away from that brook than they are with doing that cleaning and, yeah.
We would like, we have developed sort of a informal procedure where we really want everything done with Conservation Commission before you come to us, so that we don't have a
Certainly.
situation
Yeah, so
where.
not- yeah, some back and
right,
forth. Yeah, absolutely, okay.
And actually, since it came up on our last project that we're reviewing, and knowing I live out on this side of, and there was a big article in yesterday's paper about the 5,000 black bears we have in the western part of the state. Have you looked at and gone through the natural heritage habitat
Yeah,
site?
there's no natural heritage associated on the site. The polygon goes to the neighboring property on the back end of it, kind of where it slopes down off the mountain. But yeah, we've done all of the kind of GIS desktop analysis, and again, we did get an RDA for the property, so we already have gone through, with the Conservation Commission, so we've done all of that mapping and investigation with a wetland scientist. And that's kind of where we got our existing conditions plan, is that RDA approval plan. So yeah, we've done all of our due diligence as far as that goes. No vernal pools, anything like that, nothing to kind of, other than this kind of farm drainage ditch, there's nothing, no other constraints to speak of.
What about the signage? Where's the,
So they are, so this is another DOT issue that we're gonna be working through. We are looking at possibly doing a freestanding sign out along the driveway, but it is in the DOT right away, so we're kind of trying to figure that one out right now.
Okay.
There will be a sign affixed to the building, but we are starting to investigate and explore what it would take to kind of get a sign out here, just because the setback is so far back, to kind of be able to see it and have, to have it set back, no one would ever see it back here. So to have something that's kind of closer to the road, which would be in there right away. So we're kind of working through that right now. We're not sure if it's a real possibility or not.
something else that may come up? I presume you're gonna have, there's not too many neighbors out there, but lighting, proposed lighting at night.
Yeah, we will have a
for-
full photometric plan. We just didn't go through that. We didn't do that yet just because we weren't sure
Just make
what
sure.
we were gonna file. We just kind of wanted to give kind of like our cursory draft and see where it was. But yeah, there'll be lighting. We do have a lighting plan, kind of a draft lighting plan, and we'll go through the full photometrics and have that when we come before you again as well.
You mentioned the site plan review, but I'm looking at this table and it looks like it's the special permit site
Which
plan
one?
approval. The construction industry suppliers, including open storage and materials. I just wanted to.
Oh, no, it is, it's a SPA, you're right.
SPA is,
Special permit and site
Yeah.
plan review.
I thought it was. Oh, yeah, you're right. It
Yeah.
is, I'm sorry. It
Okay.
is special permit
Okay.
and site plan review. Yeah, thank you.
The office building
Yeah,
is not.
yeah, the office, yeah,
Special permit with site plan approval. for
That's the SPA, right?
yeah, SPA.
Okay.
Actually, I think,
Or
Both of them.
they both
Both
are?
Yeah, I
Both
thought
of
the other
them
one
are.
was, so
Yeah, they
that
both
makes
are.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that's what I
both
was
are. Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
prepared for.
right, it is, I'm sorry, I was misreading our acronym.
No, that's
Yeah, yes.
easy to do.
Yeah, special permit with site plan review.
Okay.
The other thing to think about is, so that intersection of Chestnut Street and Route 5 and 10.
Yep.
Because of the bend in the road, because I'm on this intersection every night now coming from,
Certainly,
home
yeah.
from this meeting. The sight lines are not great there, especially to
Not at
the,
all,
especially to the south.
Correct.
There's a little bit better sight line to the north, but to the south, it's not great.
Yep.
So you're going to want to keep that in mind as you have your curb cut there.
Yes. Yeah, and we are kind of reconfiguring the driveway as far as bringing the elevation up a little bit, just to make it easier for people coming in and out of the site to get in, because right now it's a pretty steep condition,
Yeah.
so it's like, you gotta kind of make a decision and go with it. You know, but given we're gonna have large vehicle and equipment coming here and large trucks pulling equipment, you know, we're trying to modify that condition so that it's more conducive to people easily getting in and out of the site.
Actually, Paul raised a good point on the lighting. There aren't a lot of neighbors, immediate neighbors in this area. It is, you know, the Engleharts are to the north, and then there's a couple, there's open farmland immediately to the south before
Yep.
you get to a couple more houses. But what about, you know, back up, you know, the trucks, when are they coming in and out? What are your hours going to
Yeah,
be?
so
What?
predominantly they start at about 7 o'clock in the morning and they're done about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so those are kind of the two busier times. But, you know, really the office hours are regular office hours, and most of their projects, you know,
Are
not all of
somewhere
their
else.
staff are yeah, most people are checking in, not checking into the office per se, they're going to the job site. So, you know, it's really 7 and 3 where there's kind of a flurry of activity associated with scapes. And then the rental space is fairly small, and those would be whatever hours, but, you know, the business hours for scapes are typically kind of 7 to 3, 8 to 4.
So I might have missed that. So you're planning on renting some of those office spaces?
Yeah, so in the architectural plans, there's kind of, let me see which one's kind of the best
Oh, I
here.
didn't see that one.
I just have to coordinate myself right now. Yeah, so this part of the building, which would be here.
That's the front,
That's gonna
right.
be the kind of headquarters of Scapes.
Okay.
They're gonna have a couple offices here right now. They did kind of have an idea of maybe doing a second floor at some point. But then these kind of, there'd be 6 offices here that would be for rent. Kind of Class A office space, and then they'd have shared bathrooms and things like that.
Yeah, so the fact that you do have that, I mean, there's a significant office, professional office space
Yeah, there's a lot
component
going
of
on.
this. So, it would fall into either one or both of those
Yeah,
two
that's fine,
categories.
that's why I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that
Right.
we're giving it,
Okay,
presenting it to you as it should be. But that's great.
all right. Well, here, do you
You
want
can
to
have
take
that.
these?
Yeah, I
'Cause
can
you're-
certainly take these back, thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you for coming in.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Michael Hebert, Steve Hebert, and Scott Soares. And Joe, are you part of this group too? Okay. So just for full disclosure, I know Mr. Herbert, Professor Herbert, quite well from my days at American Farmland Trust, and Scott Soares was previously the Commissioner of Agriculture here in the state, and I worked with him in that capacity. And some of you may know Joe Zykowski from Hadley, the farm-to-school wonderkind here in the valley.
I want some squash.
All right, Steve, what's up?
Well, good evening to you all. For those who don't know me, I'm Stephen Herbert. I'm a professor at the University of Massachusetts, a former Associate Dean for Agriculture. I'm the CEO of Urban Grown Inc., a S corporation in Massachusetts, and we're in the process of purchasing a 6-acre parcel of land in Hatfield, of farmland, and we would like to cultivate cannabis as a group on that land. We are currently the holders of a provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission. That's from another project that didn't go the way it should have, and so we still have that license, but we have to seek a new location with the Cannabis Control Commission. Our team is myself as CEO, my son Michael Herbert as the Chief Operating Officer, and he will be the chief grower, and will be living on site at the farm. We have a offer to purchase this land at the moment. Scott Soares is the Chief Financial Officer and former Commissioner of Agriculture, and was the head of the USDA Agency for Rural Development. Joe is a very successful farmer in Hadley, and he is going to be our Chief Technical Officer. That's Joe Sykowski. Our purpose tonight is really just to learn a little bit more about the local requirements for cannabis cultivation. It's not a formal, we were told that we could just have an informal discussion. And we thought we'd go through this with you before we go any further. We are making plans to have a community outreach meeting and to meet with the select board and seek their approval as well for the host community agreement.
So just looking at our table of use, there's two questions that come up immediately. What would you know, because you haven't mentioned where the property is, what zone it's in? If you don't want to say what the address is, that's fine, but if you know if it's rural residential, outlying residential, town center, do you know what zone it's in?
I'll turn to my side.
I believe it's rural residential ag.
Okay. And are you going to be in a greenhouse or in a enclosed facility built specifically, a sheet metal building?
No sheet metal building.
Okay, so it will be a greenhouse.
Yes, we'll be using greenhouses. Initially, we'll start with some blackout greenhouses, which allow you to deprive light into the greenhouse or light out of the greenhouse, so that we can produce cannabis as if you were controlling the photoperiod.
But it will, for all intents and purposes, look like a greenhouse for somebody that's driving by.
Yeah, those will look like a greenhouse.
Yeah.
They're very expensive. They're about $50,000 plus each, so we will not cover the whole site with those types of greenhouses. We will use poly houses, hoop houses. In addition, the light deprivation ones would allow us to do 2 or 3 crops a year. And seeing we're late in the season getting through all of this, to start with at least 2 of those this year, it would enable us to get some cash flow.
About how much square footage are you thinking you're going to have under greenhouse? Like, what's your square footage of cultivation?
Well, we have a license at the moment for 10,000 square foot, which is about a tenth of an acre. But we would like to increase the size of this. The maximum you can go is 100,000 square feet. That's only 2.29 acres of actual growing space. We're not likely to get anything close to that for a number of years. And it's all controlled by the Cannabis Control Commission. They would have to grant a license tier to whatever we want.
So you're talking about starting out with about 10,000 square feet on a 6-acre site.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll farm the rest conventionally if we don't put it into cannabis, yes.
With a traditional, not marijuana, a
No,
vegetable or something.
Joe is part of our group.
Squash.
If he finds there's no phytophthora in the soil, he can raise some squash there.
Yeah. So, assuming and not knowing your location, so so it's in a rural residential zone, which means by its sheer nature, it has. If it doesn't have neighbors, it could have neighbors. More than likely has neighbors.
Has a few neighbors,
Yeah.
yes.
So some issues I think that you're going to want to be aware of, that we're going to want to be aware of, is lighting and what that means in terms of, you know, both security lighting as well as any lighting that, you know, is created by the grow facility itself?
That is an easy one for us. Cannabis is a photoperiodic plant, and extra lighting at night would not be what we would want to have. The only place we would have it would be inside the light deprivation greenhouses, and we can close the shutters, as it were, and keep the light inside.
And then presumably for your own security needs, you're going to have fencing around this?
Yes, it would be for ourselves, but it is a requirement of the Cannabis Control Commission.
Even for the hoop houses and the greenhouses?
You have to have a perimeter fence around the whole facility.
Yeah.
Not the whole 6 acres, I presume, just what you're growing.
Where you're growing the cannabis, yes.
Right. And so by perimeter, you mean like out on the road or just around the?
Oh, just around the perimeter of the grow facility.
Right. So you could screen that fairly easily so
We
that.
could screen that in different ways, yes.
I would think that particularly if there are residential units nearby, we would want to have some kind of screening, because presumably your fencing, if not screened, could look like a prison.
Yeah.
You can do different things there. The fencing could be a black, where they cover the chain link fence with black plastic.
Or green.
Or green.
Yeah.
So it's less visible. That would be one thing. We could screen it with trees, arborvitae, or another thing, if we also, because part of the fence would be on the south side, we could put solar panels along as well. So there's many different ways to deal with that, and our goal would be to be very good neighbors to other people. So we would try and meet with those people as well and see what they suggest as well.
Well, and certainly those would be people you would want to reach out to for your community
That's
outreach
right.
meeting.
They get a special invite, actually.
Right.
And you said there's already a dwelling on the site, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Well, the dwelling will stay, because you
The
mentioned.
dwelling will stay.
Yeah,
It's a nice
Yeah.
house for him to live in.
yeah. Are there any other structures on the property right now that you'll integrate into this?
Yes, this is a well-preserved tobacco barn, about 150 feet long, with a metal roof, in very good condition. And that will be integrated into the operation. It prevents us having to build a barn or a building for drying and processing and so forth, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You will know from our bylaws that if you were at some point thinking that you wanted to put in a retail facility, that you wouldn't be able to do this here because you can't be
We are not
within.
anticipating doing that.
Okay, because you
Life
would,
is going to be complicated enough.
in all likelihood, you would be within 300 feet of a residence, if
Yeah.
not the residence on the property itself.
Yes, definitely.
So the other issue that I've heard from people, just sort of like as they're thinking about this, as odor. And so I know CCC has some fairly strict rules on that, but can you maybe talk a little bit, if not, you know, to the extent that you can now, but that'll be part of the public hearing for sure. I know it'll come up.
Yeah, the light deprivation greenhouses will have vents at the peak of the greenhouse, which would put the odors up in the air, and so typically they would dissipate. But if that's not enough, there are things that we can do in indoor buildings. They use charcoal canisters, which
Like scrubbers.
scrubbers, yeah.
Yeah.
Has a fan on top and it draws
Yeah.
the odor in, and the odor is taken out with the charcoal. We can put those in some of the greenhouses. But one of the things, the CCC does talk about odor, but they also consider greenhouses as outdoor cultivation. And we can control some of the odors in a greenhouse. It would be very difficult to control the odors in an outdoor growing situation.
Right.
except through choice of strain, two things. The reason we like greenhouses is, think about the wet conditions we had last fall. That's not very conducive to buds on cannabis drying when it's raining every day. And some strains don't do very well. They get what we call bud rot, and then they're not marketable. We don't want that. We can select certain strains which are tolerant to that, and we can also select strains which have low odor emissions. And odors only come for a short period of time, about 4 to 6 weeks in the fall. It's not, as soon as you plant cannabis, you start smelling it. You don't. It's only during the peak flowering time.
Do you plan on planting them in the soil or having them in potted? Or is that not? I don't know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, curious. I have grown it in the soil in the past, and it grows very well. We've grown it in pots as well. I prefer it in the soil, but we haven't finally decided on that part of it yet. We have to test the soil. We don't have access to the land yet. We've just got a offer to purchase, which has been signed, and we're still going through the P&S, and then we have to close on it as well.
Yeah, so I think the odor issue will be one that will come up, even if it's just concern, as opposed to it being something that is, a real or imagined issue. That it'll definitely be raised.
Some of us like the smell.
Yeah. So, what about employees? What's the size of the employment force here, and coming and going and all of that? Because, farms have a lot of coming and going. We know that. We have the Swazlowski potato farm right here on Main Street, so there's a lot of coming and going there. So can you just...
Yeah, the busiest time would be in the fall harvest period. And as we start out small, it won't be very many people at all. My son will be living on site. He'll be the chief person involved in all of the operations. As we harvest and we need some more people, we may get 1 or 2 or 3 people in the harvest period. If we got anywhere near 60 or 80,000 square feet, which is still only less, 80,000 square feet is only 1.8 acres. So it's not large, and the maximum you can go is 100,000, and that's only 2.2 acres. So it's not really large areas that are going to be emitting odors, as it were, in terms of the whole acreage. Like, I often think about farmers having to deal with nutrient management issues and things. Well, that's one farm in a town which may have so many more septic tanks and so diluted by all the forest and everything else. So we don't think the odors will be as big a concern.
But back on traffic, so you will have some employees at some point coming and going.
Yeah.
What about pickups, deliveries? Are these panel trucks or these semis that are coming in? I mean, what,
I
just
can't tell you what they will be. We're not allowed. But they will be nondescript vehicles, and it won't be big semi-trucks or anything like that. It will be vehicles that have no markings on them.
Right, but I'm thinking more about size.
Size.
We have issues in this town
Yep.
with semis going to CNS, getting on the wrong street, backing into people's driveways
taking
and stuff
down
like that,
letterbox.
and taking out mailboxes.
Yep.
So I mean, if these are, small Ford Connects and panel vans, that's one thing. But if we're talking about really big rigs on what otherwise are, rural roads, residential rural farm roads.
Yes. When you harvest cannabis, it's a plant that may reach 6 feet tall or more, but you're only taking a small part of that. So the quantity, you're talking about pounds rather than tons for the whole harvest.
Right.
So they will be smaller vehicles, they won't be large vehicles.
Okay.
And then the waste product or the byproduct,
The waste product by the CCC cannot have any, after you have harvested, and if you put it into a compost pile, especially if the compost pile was outside of the secure area, it could not have any collectible material on it. So typically it would be shredded or put through a corn chopper or something like that before you compost it.
And you would compost it and then use it again yourself, or?
We
would it-
could use it again ourselves.
Yeah.
Or, maybe have a vegetable garden on part of the 6 acres that's not in cannabis and put it in there. We as growers cannot sell to the public.
right,
Right.
We cannot give it away to anybody. We only can give it, sell it to, not give it, to manufacturers, of which you have one in Hatfield,
Right.
and to dispensaries. We will deliver to them, most likely,
You mean a retail establishment?
yeah, to a
right,
retail establishment
Right.
or to a manufacturer.
Right,
Manufacturers may take a whole plant too. All the branches off, less the main stem, so that they can extract lower concentrations out of the leaves and things like that. Which is good for us, because we don't have to trim it and all the rest.
not to get worried, you don't have to worry about that waste product.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
The stem, it's got nothing in it.
okay. So, well, you're gonna need a special permit site plan review. You're gonna wanna get your application in. You know, I would double check with Conservation Commission to see if there's any issues there,
Wetlands.
wetlands or anything like that.
There is a stream at the base of the property. But I
In the-
don't know whether it's intermittent or just,
I would check, I would
Yeah, I'll check.
definitely have that, and as we were discussing with the previous
Yeah.
applicant, that we like to have all that stuff taken care of beforehand.
sure. I have one question. Do we have to go through the planning board before the select board, or?
So I think you've already gone through CCC, you have a
We've gone through
provisional
CCC.
license. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, what we did on the last one, we sort of worked in parallel. We were reviewing it from the standpoint of our zoning bylaw and the planning requirements. And then at the same time, there was discussions with the Board of Select Board about, you know, a new business coming into town and negotiating that host agreement.
So we could do them together?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, great. So,
yeah.
yeah, and as far as the community outreach meeting, we can hold that anytime.
Yeah, that's in addition to whatever
Yes.
public hearings that we may hold.
Yes,
or-
yes,
And
yes.
will hold, yes.
Yeah, we understand
absolutely,
all of
yeah,
that.
right.
They want to have the community outreach before they come to see us?
It's,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't really matter, but it's not a bad idea to do.
We'll try and schedule that in the next upcoming weeks.
Yeah, because that way you're going to get an idea as to sort of
The-
what issues you're going to need to address when you come to us, or maybe,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because presumably the people that attend the community meeting will also be the people that will attend the public hearing if they have some issues or concerns.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
All right?
any more questions? I'll try and answer them. Or if you want to grill Scott or Joe or Michael,
Yeah.
you can too.
So you didn't, I have a question about the number of employees.
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to be 10,
I
20,
doubt whether
30?
it'll be 10. We just don't know yet. Certainly, as we start out with 4 greenhouses, we can pretty easily take care of it amongst ourselves. Every employee has to be cleared by the CCC. You've got to go through a Corey check, which is no small matter because they charge you $400 each person.
Yeah.
It's not your after-school monitor Corey check. It's a little more detail than that. And so we won't be trying to get too many employees We just want to have enough employees.
Okay.
Before you leave, I have a question for
Yeah.
you on solar panels.
Yeah,
So I know that you did the research up in Deerfield on.
I still am.
Still doing that, okay. But how generally do you feel about spiked solar panels on farm ground that, could get pulled in 20 years or whatever?
the way we did it for the others, we put a pole in the ground, we hammered it in, we used a fence post pounder, which wasn't designed for steel on steel, so it really wrecked the ears and wrecked the machine a little bit too. But we put them in 8 feet into the soil. And then on top of these poles, we put a cross beam and then mounted clusters of panels on this. And I did this, research aspect was that I left gaps between from 2 feet to 3 to 4 to 5. So I could let light in and see how much light needed to come in to keep pasture growing and the last 3 years vegetables growing. And so, yeah, in my view, it's almost sinful to put it on farmland.
Yeah, because you got it already dug up and it's all ready to go.
Yeah,
I can
the
see
way
that.
we did it,
But you
me-
put no concrete pillars,
There's
no
no concrete-
concrete, what do they call them, deadheads or whatever?
nothing.
So whether or not you were able to get the light and everything that you were hoping for to grow underneath, when you pull those out,
Yeah,
you basically have,
holes in the ground, but it's farmland
it's
still.
farmed again.
Yeah,
Or could
So
be
you go
farmed.
back and till it and you take care of the post hole?
There is no concrete to trip your plow up on.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And there's no basement or driveway, or if it was a house, if it had been converted to a subdivision as opposed to being a solar field for 20 years
Yeah,
or
no,
something.
it's been quite successful. The state actually picked up on this Department of Agricultural Resources energy program, picked up on it, and have come up with a program, a START program for solar developers. If they do it in a way that keeps at least 50% of the light coming into the soil level, that they will get a better price for electricity.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's all modeled after what we did in Deerfield.
You're kidding, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is
That
it,
is really professional stuff now when you're getting into that.
yeah, so there's not many programs us as professors can look to that a state has picked up.
As a result of your,
Yeah, so I feel pretty good about that.
yeah, absolutely.
It's not all mine. It started with
Yeah.
diversified construction in Amherst. Coming to me the other day, can we make hay under solar panels? I said, silly idea. Because you're going through making hay, you're going to be driving through the field 3 or 4 or 5 times. The chances running into a pole is great.
Pretty good,
Pretty
yeah.
high.
You wreck the pole, no more likely you wreck the tractor and equipment and yourself.
Right.
So we came back to, we could raise cattle underneath them. I've talked too much about solar.
Thanks, Steve.
Out west, they're doing the cattle thing a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're really.
Cattle like it, it's shady.
Yeah, they lay all.
2016, that really hot year we had, the temperature under the solar panels was 15 degrees lower than out in the full sun,
Huh,
leaf temperature.
yeah.
And the crops that year did better than out in the
under.
full sun.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so we are going to move on, and we're right on schedule. This is great.
That never happens.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to thank those members who are going to be able to be here next Wednesday. There was somewhat of an unavoidable snafu in terms of the publishing of the hearing notices, and so we weren't going to be able to do it tonight as we had hoped. So I really appreciate that you all, or some of you, enough.
You're gonna be away,
Because
Bob.
I have to be away. I'm away next week.
Yeah, but you're back for the meeting in May.
May 1st.
And I won't be here next week either.
Yeah, so it'll be the two Pauls and
Okay.
Michael. So actually, Paul, if Dostal, I know you are the co-chair, but since Paul Abbey has been here for most of the discussions about these, can I ask him to chair that meeting next week?
Sure.
I would rather not because I'm going out the door to next meeting, you know what I mean?
Well, that's true, but just if there's a way of, well, that's fine. I mean, if,
I will be here right behind Paul. I mean,
okay,
yeah, I'm not,
all right, that's great. Yeah, I,
I mean, if there was a little more room here, you know, but
Yeah.
it's pretty tight, you know. You're going to stand up and say you're the chairman of the meeting, and then the next meeting, your door hits your
Yeah.
ass. You know, it's kind of tough. I had a talk with Wilma about that.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd like to do tonight, though, is to just sort of preview the bylaws in the order in which they're listed. And then also, in the case of the first two, if we could also review the fact sheets, the draft fact sheets that were put together by Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which will be available next week. And then I would like to have them available out in the lobby of Town Hall leading up to town meeting, and they'll be at town meeting.
Great.
So the first one is the Open Space Development Bylaw. And for those folks that are watching on television and those here in the audience,
Don't put the camera down.
we currently have an open space development bylaw. We've had it since the early 2000s. It is it's a by right, but not a mandatory form of subdivision. And as Paul Labby, Paul Dostal, and myself know, we've only used it once so far. And it was a project that the three of us were then members of the board and addressed a couple years ago. We were given the opportunity through a grant from the state to have some assistance from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to take a look at some of our environmentally oriented open space and housing bylaws, and so we asked them to take a look at this one again. And a lot of work has occurred since the early 2000s around the state in revising and refining these sort of open space development bylaws. So this is an amendment to our current open space development bylaw. The most important aspects of it, which are actually articulated on the fact sheet, is that it increases the amount of land to be protected in an open space development from the current 40% to 50%. We make some adjustments here and there in the language to just tweaking it in many respects. We add the Open Space Committee and the Ag Advisory Committee as two entities to be consulted on projects. If it's of ag nature, the Ag Committee. If it's of open space, woodland wildlife habitat, the Open Space Committee. The most important change, though, is that we are proposing in this bylaw that this become the de facto way of subdividing anything, any subdivision of 3 or more units. So 3 or more unit development in the future would have to be done in an open space development design, which would protect 50% of the parcel. It would not reduce the number of units that are allowed under current zoning. It would just require that they be in a more clustered, designed fashion to reduce the amount of lot size, the amount of road that's interior roads that are included, and would protect more of the parcel that would provide open space, or in the case of farmland, agriculturally viable land that could continue to be farmed.
There's 2 or 3 of those developments in Northampton at the present time. They were done over the last 10 to 15 years. Indian Hill was one of them out off of Route 66. We sold it. There was single-family dwellings, there was 2-family dwellings, there was 3-family dwellings, all in the same amount of space. There was a little bit of graduated difference in square footage of the lots from the single family to the 3-family. But it certainly did do what it was supposed to do. It was all built close to the road. okay? So there wasn't a huge amount of blacktop development out into the field, okay? And they gave a lot of that other stuff as hiking trails, walking trails, and that kind of stuff. It worked. It absolutely worked. It was a little less expensive because of all the development situation where firefighters, police, teachers could afford to buy into this project. Everything was brought down in money, is what I'm trying to tell you. All of the, so it does work. There's no question about it. And
The other thing that we do, which we don't have in our current bylaw, and this may be, Paul, I know you missed were not here for our most recent meeting with them, with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, but see if I can find the,
is there going to be a rep from Pioneer Valley here?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
good.
Corinne will be here to talk about this, and then Becky will be here to talk about the accessory apartment. In section 6.2.9, we actually allow for each additional 10% of the site over the required 50% set aside as open space. So you're required to put in 50%. If you put in an additional 10%, so you're now making it 60%, you can get a bonus of 5% of the basic number of units that can be awarded. You can't exceed 20% of the basic maximum number, but you can get, for every additional 10% of the site that's protected, you can get a 5% bonus on the maximum number of units that would be allowed in the development as an incentive for protecting more land. We also added at the last meeting that for an additional 10% of the site comprised entirely of agricultural soils, that you actually get a bonus of 10%. So if it's productive agricultural soils, you can actually get a 10% bonus as opposed to a 5% bonus. We also then put in for every one dwelling unit that's restricted to a moderate income or low income household, you can get one additional market rate dwelling unit added to the basic number.
Yep.
And that unit has to be restricted. The affordable unit has to be restricted, and it has to be counted towards the housing inventory
for the town.
as determined by the Mass Department of Community Housing and Community Development. So they would be the final arbiter. If it meets their standards and can be counted towards our affordable inventory, then that you would get that. And then finally, if there's a historic structure on the property as approved by the Hatfield Historical Commission, and it's preserved and subject to a historic preservation restriction, and this is a change we need to make, and I can do this because I have the document. This should say approved by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The Massachusetts Historical Commission does not hold these easements. They approve them, but they don't hold them. They're held by the community. So we want to make sure that that says approved by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So for each historic structure that's protected, you get one
More
additional market dwelling unit added to the basic number. Those are the major changes.
Yeah.
It is a major change that we would have this become the de facto form of subdivision for anything of 3 units or more.
Yeah.
But I think from what we've heard from folks of late about the desire to protect open space in town, as we were talking about earlier, well, actually, I was talking about with the Ag Commission, not at this meeting. I've been talking to some folks along Main Street, and we always think about these lots as being really big because there's a lot of land behind them, but they're actually fairly small lots.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not.
The property behind them are owned by other people.
Yes.
And farmed, and the lot that's the house is on is actually quite small.
Yeah.
And we have a very attractive downtown, very attractive Main Street.
Yeah.
And so we can protect a lot of open space while still retaining the opportunity for development as well as the rights of the landowner in terms of the number of units they could build. We're not taking away property rights
Yeah.
by doing this, just
Yeah.
how it gets
Yeah.
built out.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at the fact sheet. The one,
Do you have an extra one of those?
oh yeah, they're in your.
I don't,
I
it's
didn't
in-
get one.
You didn't get one? Oh,
fact sheet, I didn't get it, Bill.
They should be,
Is there-
or maybe, oh yeah, they're in the back color.
oh, here you go. It's right here.
It's a great sheet, like
wait a
it
minute. Oh, it's in
explains
the-
everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's in this, okay, all right, I got you.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Never mind.
I would like to ask Corinne if she could provide a little different example than the one that she provided for two reasons. One, first of all, this one has two parcels as opposed, and not many people own two parcels of land that they're gonna,
This is the one.
you know, that they're gonna develop. They own one parcel.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would prefer, actually, given the nature of town, that the example be one of farmland
Yes.
with, you know, maybe a tobacco barn on it, and show, and so I'm sort of thinking, rather than, you know, two parcels that equal, what, she has them now as 30, let's see.
Lots with
30 lots, so there'd be, she's got, 810,000 square feet, 810,000 square feet for both. I'd rather have it be as if it was just one parcel and show what that would look like if it was developed all farmland, and then have it then, you know, half of it be protected, and then show, because in the one that she has right now, particularly with the pond,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there could be some people that would look at this and go, well, I want a house near a pond.
Yeah, yeah.
I want, you know,
Yeah, right.
and also, I think that it's not, this is perhaps more what other larger towns might see as potential size developments, as opposed to what we might see in Hatfield. I mean, we haven't had a 30-lot subdivision.
Never.
I mean,
There's never been a 30-lot
You would know.
subdivision. Never.
I mean, well, was Primrose Path, I mean, was that all done as one big subdivision?
Yeah, it was, but I don't think there's 30 lots in there, is there?
Well, let's say that's probably one of the biggest ones we have, right? That and maybe Plantation
Well,
Road.
Plantation Road is nothing, it's just an L, there's, you know, maybe
a street.
15, 16 houses on
Yeah.
there, 17.
Briggs
Yeah.
Road, North Hatfield Road
But
area.
I don't know if Primrose has got 25 or 30, I don't know.
So, but that still would be the biggest one we've ever done.
Right,
And I
right,
think that this is just outsized what we would typically have in
Yeah.
Hatfield. So I would like to have them scale this down, make it a little more Hatfield scaled.
Yeah,
Are you?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay with
that
that,
sounds
okay.
good to me.
I didn't see anything, I thought the rest of this one in particular was really good.
It looks like that the density bonuses, I don't think she mentioned the farm one, the farmland one. Unless it's just worded differently.
It's not in here. Okay, so we want to have the farmland one added. Okay. Farmland bonus, okay. Good catch. All right. I told them that I would get these to them tomorrow morning, so that they would have a week to update these. So the second one is our accessory apartments. This is a brand-new bylaw.
Right.
And this would allow someone to put in an accessory apartment either within an existing structure or attached to an existing structure. We are not allowing detached units.
Right, no detached, that's right,
We're also requiring that they be owner-occupied.
okay.
Actually, I saw an article just today about this issue. This is being addressed
That's on the front page, Jimmy, of that thing.
this is being addressed in Williamstown.
It is, yeah,
And the issues there is they're allowing detached units, which a number of people are concerned about, and they're also not requiring owner-occupant. And that's,
So you're going to have a lot of rentals.
right, exactly.
And
So,
especially detached, I mean, that's just
Yeah.
asking for.
yeah, so
It's like having two houses on one lot.
That's right, that's
So
exactly what.
thinking about that, we purposely limited it to within the existing structure, which would be
Right.
by right, so that would go right to the building inspector. But in addition, would go to us as a special permit.
Yeah.
And we kept the parking requirements the same as they
Same,
are
yeah.
now.
Okay.
We talked about changing them,
Right,
but.
but we kept them the way
Yeah,
they are.
yeah, okay.
And we also require it be owner occupied.
And is that part of the, like in the deed restriction, or did we address that? Remember, we talked about that so that.
Yeah, so that's in here.
So that if I sell that property, or the individual sells that property, that they can't have an apartment there.
Just go make an apartment for Joe Blow.
Yeah, so in the application procedure, and then in section D and section E, it discusses how, in the bylaw
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
it discusses how we maintain that.
Okay, so we kept that.
Yeah, that's
that-
it,
we- I
that's-
know we talked about
Yeah,
that.
that's kept in there.
All right.
I have a question. Can I
Sure.
ask a question?
Sure,
So we have an accessory apartment
Uh-huh.
on our house. It's been there for 32 years.
Right.
And it's 1,000 square feet.
right,
This talks about 900 square feet.
right.
So is that gonna be a problem for me?
No,
No, we're not
because
going-
we're not, so.
going back.
We're not going back.
Okay.
In fact, there's, that's one thing, if we go to this fact sheet, there's a number of things on this fact sheet that I want them to change. First of all, our bylaw is referred to as an accessory apartment bylaw, and the fact sheet uses accessory dwelling unit bylaw, and I'd like to have that just consistently say accessory apartment
Yeah,
bylaw.
Me too.
If you look at the on the front page, the last bullet under highlights of the proposed bylaw, it says the planning board will review accessory apartments built during the 10 years prior to adoption of this bylaw to confirm that they comply with state building code. We actually, that needs to be changed. The will needs to be changed to may.
Yeah.
Because at our last meeting, we specifically talked to Corinne and Becky. In the bylaw itself, in section F, B, we actually changed it to the planning board may authorize, under a special permit and in conjunction with the building inspector, a use known as an accessory apartment. The board will review each accessory apartment constructed on a case-by-case basis to determine if the dwelling unit conforms to state building code regulations. We added that in there because when talking to the building inspector, the thought was, first of all, we don't have the infrastructure to go and review everyone that's out there.
Yeah, right.
And yours, in your case, is 1,000 square feet. We're not going to make you chop off 100 square feet. It was already there. But, and this is the discussion.
Get a closet,
This
though.
is the discussion we had.
Betsy's got to live over there.
Yeah, this is the discussion we have with the building inspector. If you were, for example, to go in to get a building permit for something at your house, and the building inspector comes in and says, hey, I see you have this accessory apartment, but the electricity isn't up to code, or there's certain elements, at that point, they may say, we want you to conform with the current building regulations. Because there's no doubt that some people have put in apartments in town.
Oh, hell yeah.
Without, anyone
the
really
benefit
knowing.
of Kyle coming by.
So this is an opportunity for us to maybe, but we're not going to go out there and
Not
look.
seeking them
We're
out.
not looking for them.
Yeah, and
So that,
the will is not going to be there.
right, so that needs to be changed to may. And then there's a number of places where it says dwelling unit, and I'd like it to say apartment, so
apartment.
that it's consistent with the way our language, is that
Yeah,
good with
that's good.
everybody?
Yep.
Okay. All right, now, the other bylaw that will be discussed next week at the hearing to go before town meeting is the zoning bylaw. This is really a housekeeping item. We have section 2.4 in our current bylaw, which is the floodplain overlay district. The state, in keeping consistent with the National Flood Insurance Program, has made recommendations to all of the communities across the Commonwealth to update their floodplain overlay districts so that they are consistent with the current language that's being used by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. And so I met with Marlene and I don't remember her name, but the director of the National Flood Hazard Management Program for the state of Massachusetts. We had a conference call, and she went through our current floodplain overlay district to make it very clear where we needed to make some changes so that we were consistent with the current language. And that's all that this bylaw does.
Okay.
We also discovered, as we were doing that there was some segments of our bylaw that were the numbering was incorrect in terms of just the the way you number. And
I
so
got you.
that's what number 1 does. That corrects the numbering order.
Yep.
And also then we strike our district delineation language and put in new delineation language, which is in keeping with where things are with FEMA and their floodplain maps. And then there's some additional language that's put in entirely to maintain our consistency with the National Flood Insurance Program. So you can see the document in the back is our current bylaw that shows where we have to strike certain things.
Yeah.
To
Just to clean it up,
just
though.
to
It's
clean
not
it
a,
up.
it's not a, yeah.
It is a housekeeping matter.
Yeah, okay.
The last one is the expedited permitting. And I've talked to Marlene again tonight. She is going to attend the meeting on next week
Oh, good.
to further explain what's going on. She sent us all this memo. And in the memo, it says the guide attached that outlines the steps for adopting Chapter 43D. Well, she forgot to include that. So I have it here
Okay, great.
for you all to read at your leisure. We adopted this expedited local permitting bylaw a number of years ago.
2014, I think she
Yeah,
said,
but apparently it was adopted incorrectly. So we need to correct that. And she's also working with town council right now because one of the issues is, does the bylaw have to actually state the individual sites that would be eligible for expedited permitting? And if so, do we have to amend the bylaw itself each and every time a new site comes up? Or are we just adding to a list? Because when you read this step-by-step guide to adoption, and now we're really getting into the weeds, an amendment to the zoning bylaw requires a 2/3 vote.
Yep.
But if you read this, it says that adding a new parcel to the expedited permitting list only requires a majority vote. So we don't really want to be amending our bylaw
All the
to
time.
add a new site, because that could easily be argued would require a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
So Marlene is working through these details with town council and expects to have them all done and ready by next week, and she will be at the meeting next week to further explain exactly why it is we're doing all of this. We do know that there's a parcel that would like to be considered an expedited permitted parcel, and that's the Stiebel-Eltron parcel out on West Street.
Yeah.
This does not remove our opportunity to review a project for special permit and site plan approval. It's just that it needs to be expedited in a 180-day period. But, you know, in all the time I've been on the planning board, I don't think we've ever
I don't
had,
think so either.
except maybe this solar project, go 180 days.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, but we're close with the solar project.
We are.
And the other reason too is it helps us on the state be more eligible for grants and things like that, for MassWorks grants.
MassWorks grants. It helps immensely. It adds points to our MassWork grant applications for projects that otherwise, you know, meet the current zoning. This doesn't require, you know, a zone change or anything like that. These would be, you know, industrial, light industrial, or commercial.
Yeah. Yep.
in currently zoned commercial light industrial or industrial sites.
And what we adopted, is that what we adopted last time? We didn't say which parcels, but wasn't there, like, from the Church Avenue area to Chestnut Street, or is that not true? Or I don't know if that's.
I don't think that specificity was in there, and I think that actually I think what we did, and this is what Marlene will be able to explain next week, and really ask her as many questions as you need to. I think what happened in 2014 was it was wrong. Basically, we're sort of starting over.
Okay.
So those are the bylaws that we'll discuss at public hearing next week.
Yep.
And so people may come up, I mean, is this an amendment change, putting it approved by? Not really. I mean, that's a Scrivener's error, as they call it. You'll get comments from the audience or anyone that's here. But what you'll want to do is get a motion to advance the bylaws to town meeting,
To the town meeting.
as we did
That's the most important part of the
as
whole
we did
thing.
last year
Okay.
with the cannabis establishment bylaw. Since it's on the agenda, I feel like we can do this. We have Clean Focus Renewables on the agenda. A vote to continue the hearing
So
from,
that should be from not the 10th, that should be from the 3/6/19, right?
well, yeah, they wanted to, yeah.
They wanted to come to
but
this
They
meeting.
wanted to come to this meeting.
Originally, so I
Yeah,
don't know
so-
if that was a typo or.
Right, so can I get a vote to just say that our public hearing, or the continuation of our public hearing on Clean Focus Renewables will be on May 1st?
I'll make a motion to have the Clean Focus Renewables hearing on May 1st, 2019.
Second.
Second by Paul. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay. So, Paul, I don't believe you're going to be able to vote on this project
Yeah.
because you haven't been able to be at all.
I missed that one meeting.
Right. Actually, I think maybe you might have missed, you definitely missed one. I don't know.
Just one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
So is Michael definitely going to be here?
Yeah,
And
so Mi-
Steph?
Yep, I will
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So
for
there'll be
May
three of
1st.
us.
This is- yeah.
Three is good.
Well, I'll be here on May 1st.
May 1st.
May
Yeah, I'll be
1st,
here
yeah,
May
okay.
1st.
Just next week you won't be.
But actually, as a point of reference, we have discussed this, and it came up at our last meeting. The issue was raised that we were, and I'm glad, Paul, you're here, because you were a member of the planning board when we did this, when the solar bylaws were added. I was not.
Yeah.
So you're the only person who is still
On the board.
associated with the planning board. It was pointed out at our last meeting by Mr. Pill, who's been retained by Bernie Simorowski, that the all of the solar installations are under accessory use, including medium ground mount and large ground mount.
I look at this, just to see what he had to say.
Well, so I was
Oh,
going
okay, go ahead.
to, so I'm going to read this. And that seemed odd to me. And I wondered if it was maybe just an oversight, because on our table of use, at the time, solar was added to the table of use, and it was just added to the end of the table of use, and which is accessory uses, and it was just added to the end in the same order as which, the other items are there, like home occupation, elder care home, off-street parking, and loading. It seems perfectly reasonable that a roof or ground mount for a residential unit would be an accessory use. You don't want your solar field in your yard
Yeah,
to
right.
overwhelm
Yeah, right.
the use.
Right.
And it could probably even be argued that the solar electric cooperative needs to be an accessory use for those that are part of the membership. But a medium ground mount unit, which is for resale, so that's really like a manufacturing. That's
Yeah.
the manufacturing of solar
Yeah.
electricity.
Yeah.
Of up to 500 kW or 5 megawatts or no larger than 2 acres. And then large ground mount, which is again to generate power for resale, not to a member and not for your own home, of 5 megawatts or larger than 2 acres. That you could have a parcel that's entirely absorbed by that large ground mount and medium ground mount.
Right.
And which would seem to suggest that they're more industrial uses than they are accessory uses.
Yeah.
So I talked to our attorney about this because it would seem like this would be something that we would want to address in the future in terms of amending our table of use. And he said that in discussing it with him and him reviewing it, this is what he wrote. The location of that use in the table of use under accessory uses appears to have been unintended, as this major industrial or commercial use is not customarily incidental to any other use. This is the medium ground mount and large ground mount. The town may lack a legal power to limit such a use to situations where it is genuinely accessory to some principal use, since such a limitation might violate the provision of General Law 40A, Section 3, which says that no zoning bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, except when necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare. So we could actually, by calling it accessory use and saying it has to be an accessory use, we may be actually running afoul of this exemption that's in the state law.
Yeah, right. You can't stop one for the other. That's the...
In any event, and here's what so we can't, the rules are the rules as they are right now. So we need to consider the current project before us under accessory use. The project, and I've asked for a clarification on this from the applicant. My understanding is that the project is about 7 acres of about a 90-acre parcel of land in Hatfield.
Bigger than that.
Well, there's a lot of land in
I know
Waivers.
there's 90 acres, but I thought that's 7 acres. I thought it was,
Yeah, it was like 9% of the
Okay,
parcel, so that's
so that's
probably
like
around
nine.
there.
Around
Yeah.
8 to 10.
10%.
Yeah.
So 10% would be 9 acres.
9
yeah.
acres. So we
That's-
could make an argument that it's accessory to the rest of the parcel, which will still be kept in agriculture or
Cultural.
woodland or
Yeah.
open space. So anyway, we're not making any decisions here tonight. It wasn't, the item was on the agenda in terms of discussing the extension to next May 1st. But I did want to, because I know this had come up at the last meeting, we'll debate it, it'll be discussed, but I just wanted to let you know what I had heard from the town council on this particular matter and where it resides right now in our table of use. But I think going forward, perhaps for next town meeting, we may want to do
Yes.
and amend this as a housekeeping item and move those two out of accessory use and put them
Into a commercial use.
into a commercial and industrial category.
I think
Yeah, because they certainly are.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
there's no question
in our
about
defense
that.
at that particular time, this was like, we had zero experience, zero knowledge. People
Right.
were,
Well, the state was throwing.
didn't have anything.
The state was like saying, if you got, it was a little bit like the cannabis stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't have a bylaw by X,
right.
our rules pertain.
And that's what started that
Every
thing.
time
was-
I pick up the newspaper, I'm amazed at how far ahead of this cannabis thing we were in Hatfield
Yeah.
compared to everybody. They're just starting to play the game now.
Right, I know.
So,
A lot of people are playing catch up. They're way behind.
oh, way behind. Yeah, way behind. I was surprised how far ahead, leapfrogged we were in the deal.
Now, the other thing I've asked the town clerk is to get a confirmation from the election board or whatever, the state election commission or the secretary of state, whoever, as to when exactly, your term is over. Because I know the elections are the third week, the third Tuesday,
21st, I
the
think.
third Tuesday in May. We elect a president in November, but they don't
Can't
get
get until
inaugurated
January, yeah.
until January. Because, and I know that, I'm thinking fiscal year, that maybe it's on a fiscal year, so you would actually serve until July 1st. So the town clerk is actually confirming whether or not the whoever wins your seat.
Takes it over
it
Tuesday
over-
or the 1st of July.
Or
Yeah.
the 1st of July.
Okay.
Because if it were that it's the 1st of July, then you could conceivably be here for a June meeting.
Yeah, right.
Because if we don't get this hearing done before you leave,
Then we got
we have to start all over again.
Oh, really?
Yes, because
we don't have a
we
quorum.
wouldn't have a quorum because we have to have at least 4 members for a special permit. And we would have Steph, myself, and Michael.
Because I missed the one meeting.
That's right, so I see.
We wouldn't have 4. So, I don't know how this is going to fall out, but our meeting in May is, for everybody's sake, they want to see this, a decision made.
Yeah, right.
One way or the other.
Right.
But if it's not made by May 1st, we may have an issue that we need to go back to the town council on to get a finding.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't have to run away. I'm not running away. I mean, if it's got to be till July 1, it's July 1, whatever, however it falls.
Right, but it could be that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of thinking that it was fiscal year, and Lydia actually admitted that she wasn't 100% certain.
know.
So she was going to check with the Secretary of State's office.
Good deal.
Yeah.
That'll give
fact, I
Jimmy
don't
more
think that
time
if
to
that,
walk
you know,
around
it's-
town,
it's-
get in shape to be
I
in
don't
the
think
building.
it's ever come up before, because it's like, same thing with the selectmen or any other board.
Right.
If they win the election,
They take over right
take
then and
over
there.
then and there.
Right.
Yeah,
But it's never been, in our case.
We haven't been in the middle of a
Right,
hearing
right.
process
Exactly.
where it is an issue. That's what made me think of it,
Yeah.
was
Oh,
the
it's-
fact that we're in the middle of
Right.
we're in the middle of a deliberations.
yeah.
So, okay. So actually, on that note, I will remind the voters who are watching tonight that there are 3 positions on the planning board that are going to be voted on at Maytown at annual election. We have 2 members who were appointed to positions that need to run for the extension of those positions, and then Paul is retiring, so we have an open seat. So, is there any other discussion?
Are we supposed to do those minutes?
Oh, we have 2
Minutes,
minutes,
you
yeah, we have 2 packages of, or 2 minutes in our package, and I think one of them,
Was
you were not here for,
February
Paul.
6th, right?
Yeah, I was here February 6th.
all right, so February 6th, all of us were here.
Right.
So this was the first, hearing, official hearing for Clean Focus Renewables, because the Gazette did not print the second legal notice, so our first meeting with them was void. So we started all over again, and so there's extensive discussion in here about that conversation. And then we had our hearing with Dr. Hauschka and Tony Graves.
Yeah.
Actually, I should go back. We made a motion on the Clean Focus Renewables to continue the hearing to March 6th, based on, and Mr. Dostal made that motion, that we, notification from the Conservation Commission of their determination as relates to their peer review on any changes that needed to be made and modifications, that they address decommissioning, they give us some estimate of what the town tax revenue would be, if there is any way to set the solar array further back off of Main Street, and then confirmation that Mr. Chang had contacted the town assessor's office regarding Chapter 61A.
Did that come up in the March 6th meeting, or March?
Yeah, so we'll get,
Okay.
we'll get to that one. And then, so Dr. Hauschka came in. There were a number of residents here. There were a number who actually were at the informal presentation that they
Right.
did.
And they
And
were,
they came back, and actually, they stood up and said that after discussing the project further with the Hauschka staff, that they were actually okay with the project as proposed. We did get a letter from Joan and Peter Dube of 17 North Street expressing their concerns and opposition to the project. But after hearing all that was said and then the comments that were made by those that were here, we had a motion to accept their request for waivers on a number of items, section numbers 6, 8, 9, 11, 12, 14, and 15 of section 5.334A. That motion was made by Paul Dostal, seconded by Paul Abbey, and passed unanimously. And then a motion to approve a site plan review and special permit was made by Mr. Labby, seconded by Steph Slige, and again, that passed unanimously. And I've not heard of any...
Oh, they're going ahead, they're moving along smartly over there.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any issue with an appeal.
No,
And
they're
then
going-
Corinne was here, and we discussed the open space development bylaw. And then Chris Bloom came in to give us a schematic of a proposal that he had for 30 units of condominium units on out on Main Street. This is the property owned by Mr. It's not Mark Stein, it's the property that wraps around Mark Stein's house.
It was farmed by Enterprise Farm up until.
Yeah, until they went out of business, but I can't remember the gentleman's name who owns it.
can't
He
either.
passed away, and it's now in his children's hands. We've not heard anything back from Mr. Bloom. So can I get a motion to accept the minutes of February 6th?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Steph seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And then March 6th was our next hearing on Clean Focus Renewables. We had a public forum. Anna Holhout brought forward a plan for property on 59, actually the property is on North Street. Curious as to whether or not it would be eligible for an approval not required. We told her that we thought that she should have Randy Iser of Harold Eaton Associates do some work, but that currently, as she was proposing the subdivision, that it would not
Work,
be
right.
an A&R.
Right.
That was not a public hearing. We then had the continuation of the public hearing for Clean Focus Renewables. This was the meeting at which we did have some issues with the tape, and Wilma was not here, so our minutes are a little on the skimpy side, although we took no actions that night except to continue the hearing to tonight, April 10th, which we've been asked to do and we voted on earlier to extend to May 1st. Attorney Pill, representing Bernie Simorowski, provided a fairly long memo outlining their concerns and issues, which we took under consideration, and in particular seeking that we, urging us to seek outside professional services to peer review the applicant's stormwater management and decommissioning plans, which we since have done. As I mentioned earlier, we've retained GZA Engineering, who were the same folks who did the peer review work for the Conservation Commission on this project, to cover both of those items.
The other thing that we asked them to do as well, which isn't in here, is getting update from the Massachusetts, the Endangered Species Act, and like where that stands.
The natural heritage. Yes.
National, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And you've done some research on that, which I'm hoping you'll bring up then at the May 1st meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Great. And then Harrison Bardwell was here to ask about putting a farm stand in at their house on Main Street. We pointed him to the fact that Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3, the same section that provides the exemption or the provisions for solar siting, also has a number of provisions in there regarding not unduly restricting agricultural activities and the sale of products, as long as, and there are percentages within that section about how much of the produce needs to come from the farm itself, and then over and above that, produce that's sold from Massachusetts farms. And we told him to refer to that, and that if he met those standards and those requirements, that having a small farm stand would certainly be allowed under our current zoning. So he's actually doing some more research on that, and I think talking to his dad.
He is on top of it, I'll
Yeah.
tell you,
So,
really on top of it.
so can I get a motion to approve the minutes of March 6th? Paul, you
Moved.
cannot vote on this.
So
item.
moved.
So
You
moved
got
by
a second?
Paul.
Second.
Steph. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
so moved.
I'll make a motion.
I second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Before we leave, public hearing next week, April 17th, 6:30, on the proposed bylaws to be considered at town meeting. And then May 1st will be the continuation of the hearing on clean focus renewables.
And town
Thank-
meeting is the 14th of May.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, town meeting May 14th, and then elections on May 21st. Thank you.